Hey, Warrior Saints, good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. We're going to talk about rebuilding the walls. But before we do that, I want to encourage you, visit us at warriorsaints.org. You can get a glimpse at all of our fun products over there, especially, excitingly, our book, The Way of the Warrior Saint. Great book. If you want to read it, warriorsaints.org. Get there, get a copy. All right. Nehemiah. What? Most people don't even know about this Nehemiah. If I were to say to some people, hey, open your Bible to Nehemiah, they might not even know that there actually was a book of Nehemiah in the Bible. But indeed there is. And his name, Nehemiah, means Yahweh, or the Lord, shall comfort, or Yahweh comforts, the Lord comforts. And the story of Nehemiah is about the destruction of Jerusalem. So here's a little history and biblical trivia for us. In the year 587 BC, the Babylonian armies under Nebuchadnezzar came into Jerusalem and destroyed the city. They sacked it, they crushed the city, and they took the Jews into exile. So some of our biblical scholars will have familiar with this term about the exile. The people of God, the Israelites, were taken out of the city and dispersed, hence the word diaspora, into other parts of the world, with the large bulk of them being taken as slaves into Babylon. And so the city was destroyed. And you imagine as you watch old, how do I want to say it? Movies about older times, about ancient times, you'll see like when a city is destroyed, it's lit on fire and the walls are crumbling down, i.e. kind of like Daenerys Stormborn sacked, King's Landing with the dragons and blew the walls and all that kind of stuff. That's what happened in Jerusalem. Now, at some point much later, under King Cyrus of the Persians came and took over from the Babylonians, they allowed Nehemiah, or they allowed the people of God to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls. And Nehemiah is the story of a man, Nehemiah, who is led back or sent back to rebuild the walls. And when he gets there, here's what I want to talk about this week. We read in the opening chapter, chapter 1, he goes to Jerusalem and he sees it. And as he goes, we hear this word from verse 3, chapter 1, verse 3. The remnant there in the province who has survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. And then listen to these words. This is our theme this week. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and the gates are destroyed by fire. As warrior saints, we might ask that question properly. So what's this all about? What's the big deal about the walls? If you think about an ancient city, and if you think of any like medieval England knight type of a movie, or even, Viking genres, or, anything ancient, think about like all the way back to even Christ's time. Even before that, cities were protected by walls, right? Like walls kept the bad guys out. We don't have that so much anymore in our modern American city. Other countries, they all have border walls and all that kind of stuff. But in our cities, like where I live, we don't drive from one city to another and have to go through big barriers of walls where they open gates and, soldiers with spears and pikes let us in. It doesn't work like that. We just drive on the freeway because there is a other sense of security. But in ancient worlds, the walls were there to keep the bad guys out. That's just it. You know why they're there. Any invading army, any invading force that may want to come in and sack my city or destroy my city were prevented by walls, right? That's what walls were about. Now the gates are an important thing because obviously the gates are the doors that let people in or out of the city walls, but also the gates are an area where commerce would take place. So, again, think back to all those movies or TV shows you watch about those ancient times. When the city gates are opened, there'd be like this great big courtyard area where the vendors would come and sell their bread or sell fish or sell meat, or they would trade with one another. This was the place of commerce, the place of life. It's where all things happen, kind of like our marketplace or maybe even like a mall, you would imagine today. And in the gates, more importantly, is where the old men sat. The old men sat. And they would talk and discuss and teach, meaning the walls were protection, and in the city gates was food and sustenance, and also wisdom, right? Where the old men were, where they would bring wisdom and their insight from their experience and their time in the world and share it with the younger men. So if the walls of Jerusalem were destroyed and the gates were burned by fire, what Nehemiah is ultimately telling us is that protection and wisdom are gone, right? Safety and foresight and vision are gone. Ultimately, it is a literal story that, like literally their city was ruined, but more importantly, their life was in shambles, in rubbles, right? Rubbles, Barney rubbles. Because this is what Nehemiah is worried about, is that they have abandoned God and disobeyed his commandments and his statutes and his ordinances, and his city fell, and the protection and the wisdom were in shambles. And so Nehemiah, as the Lord comforts, that's what his name means. Nehemiah literally means Yahweh comforts. The comfort is that he will come back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And that's what the book of Nehemiah is about, as he rebuilds the walls of Jerusalem. As I think about it, and I think about the world in which we live, and it's funny because most people don't even know Nehemiah as a book, let alone read it. And as I was reading it yesterday, I thought, wow, that's a fascinating story. But you know what's really fascinating is that the world which we live in, America, it's Jerusalem. And you know what else I thought? I'm Jerusalem. The message in that text is to say to me and into the world in which we as warrior saints live, is that the walls they've come crumbling down, and it is time to rebuild those walls. It's time for us as men and women, as warrior saints, to stand up and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, meaning in my own life and in the world around me. Those values that are inherently divine, those commandments, those statutes, and those ordinances that are from God, right? I'm going to read to you some of the rest of chapter 1 of Nehemiah tomorrow, and you're going to see exactly why the walls of Jerusalem and the gates were destroyed, because they didn't abide by the commandments of God. It is our task as warrior saints. Come on, fellas, it's time. You could see it. I don't need to tell you too much about it, because you can see it. You can turn on any news media outlet, any sorts of anything that comes through your phone or your tablet, and you're going to see that the walls have come crumbling down. It's time to rebuild them. We can sit and whine about it, or we can do something about it and build them. As you're rebuilding the walls, you do not have to do that alone. We are here to help you and guide you through that. That's why we push warriorsaints.org. Visit, join the way of the warrior saint. It is a fabulous Monday. Hope you beautiful people are well. We'll be back tomorrow, as always, to continue our live stream. And until then, rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.